Have you ever stopped and wondered if everything we take for granted just fell apart? How do regular people actually get through it? Well, today we're jumping into an explainer for Elliot Middleton's book, Surviving Revolution. It tackles that exact question, and it argues that there are these timeless patterns to how societies collapse, and maybe more importantly, how people survive.
Right from the start, the book hits you with this incredibly powerful quote from Solzhenitsyn. It really sets the tone. The idea here is that these revolutionary moments, they're not just about politics. They're a test of our deepest moral character, forcing every single person to face that line between good and evil that runs right through their own heart.
So this is the question that drives the whole book, and the author isn't looking for some simple, easy answer. Instead, they're digging through history, searching for patterns that can give us a kind of map for understanding not just what happened in the past, but what might be happening in our own pretty turbulent times.
Okay, so here's the first big idea from the book. Revolutions aren't just random, chaotic explosions. The author argues that whether you're looking at the fall of ancient Rome or the upheavals of today, these massive transformations tend to follow predictable patterns. And being able to see those patterns is really the first step to making sense of it all. All right, so if these revolutions follow a pattern, what does that actually look like for the people caught in the middle? According to the book, it boils down to this. People tend to react to the chaos in one of three classic ways. The author calls them timeless archetypes, three fundamental strategies for survival that show up again and again in every major upheaval. First up, you've got the winner. This is the person who sees chaos and thinks opportunity. They see it as a ladder to climb. The book points to George Washington as a fascinating example, but with a real twist. It says his true genius wasn't just winning the war, but his unbelievable restraint after he won. He resisted the temptation to become a tyrant, which is a trap that most revolutionary winners historically fall right into. The second archetype is called the loser, and the book is super clear that this is not a moral judgment. Not at all. In fact, these are often the most principled people. They're the ones trying to hold on to what's good and decent in the old world. But here's the tragedy. Their best qualities, things like loyalty and principle, become their biggest weaknesses when the revolutionary tide is just too strong to fight. And that brings us to our third path, the adapter. For this person, the number one goal is survival. They rely on being psychologically flexible, on having practical skills. They're not trying to win the war or stop it, they're trying to navigate it. They keep their head down, maintain their own inner independence, and aim to make it through the storm to find their place in whatever new world comes next. So when you look at these three paths side by side, the book makes a really crucial point. None of them is better or worse than the others. Each one is just a strategy, and each comes with its own predictable price. Winners risk becoming monsters. Losers risk being destroyed. And adapters, well, they risk moral compromise to survive. The book suggests that the path you end up on has everything to do with your own psychology and your specific situation. Now, this is where the author argues things are different for us today. It's this idea of accelerating change. Think about it. Past revolutions unfolded over decades, even generations. But today, the book argues that technology is reshaping our world so fast, our social structures, even our biology, just can't keep up. And this timeline from the book just lays it out so clearly. The first industrial revolution, driven by steam, took about 80 years to unfold. Society had generations to adjust. The second, with electricity, took 44 years. But you see the pattern. The digital and AI revolutions, we're talking about change happening over just a few years. That window we have to adapt is shrinking fast. So, what does this all mean for us right now? Well, this leads to the book's most controversial claim. The author puts forward this thesis that what we're living through isn't a grassroots uprising, but a deliberately managed revolution from above, driven by a small, coordinated elite that's using technology to reshape society on their terms. To explain how this could happen, the author lays out what they call the three pillars of democratic capture. First is consent manufacturing, basically getting the public to want what the elite wants. Second is institutional bypass, making democratic bodies like parliaments into pure theater, while the real decisions happen elsewhere. And third, resource concentration, using massive wealth as a political tool. The book then dives into the biological side of this modern revolution. It cites evidence discussed by people like molecular biologist Dr. Alina Chan about the origins of the COVID-19 virus. The author uses this to build their case that the pandemic itself was a critical catalyst for this orchestrated change. And this ties right back into that third pillar, resource concentration. According to the author, the pandemic response turned into one of the biggest wealth transfers in history. And this chart really tells the story. While small businesses got absolutely crushed, you can see these huge slices for big pharma, big tech, and e-commerce. They didn't just survive, they made unbelievable profits, concentrating both money and power. Okay, so if that's the grim picture the book paints, does it offer any kind of solution, any way out? It actually does. It points to a really fascinating counterexample to all this, the Swiss model of direct democracy. The author really sets up a stark contrast here. On one side, you have the classic revolutionary path, violent, chaotic overthrow. But on the other, you have the path the Swiss chose way back in 1848. It's an evolutionary path, one that gives power directly to the people through things like referendums, turning potential conflict into a constructive democratic conversation. But, and this is a huge but, in the book, there's a critical warning. Even Switzerland, with what might be the strongest direct democracy on Earth, really struggled against the kind of global coordination we saw during the pandemic. And the author argues this proves that no system, no matter how good, is totally safe. It needs its citizens to be constantly vigilant, constantly engaged. So all of this, the historical patterns, the three archetypes, the speed of change, it all builds to what the book presents as a final, unavoidable choice. A choice that it argues every single one of us in the modern world is now facing. And according to the author, this is it. There's no middle ground. We are heading toward one of two possible futures. Either a constitutional republic built on the idea of individual freedom and holding leaders accountable, or a technological tyranny where human life is essentially managed and controlled by algorithms. And so we end with the book's final, incredibly provocative question. The author suggests this isn't really a political choice anymore. It's a choice between human dignity and algorithmic management. It's about what it fundamentally means to be human. And the question the book leaves us with is, which one are we going to choose? Which future are we building right now, one small decision at a time?